Okay, I think we're live. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. So it's great to be here. We're here with some specialists on rural development from different organizations around the world, and we're here today to discuss the role of international cooperation and the exchange of good practices and solutions, and the achievement of rural development globally, but specifically also considering the role that Latin America and the Caribbean plays. And in this sense, in this agenda, we're also bringing specialists and discussing specifically the role that rural development has played in the Latin American and Caribbean over the course of the last years. So here with me today, I have Ms. Emma Brantford Arthur from the International Fund for Agricultural Development, Ms. Kelly Witkowski from the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation in Agriculture, Professor Govind C. Prasad from the University of the West Indies, the Faculty of Food and Agriculture, and Dr. Marcia Brandon from the My back? Hello, am I back? Great. So the overall idea of this webinar, of this discussion, is to think of ways in which we can exchange good practices. Okay, I'm back. So 2 years of pandemic and still connectivity issues and and so as I was saying, the overall idea of this webinar is just to the overall idea of this webinar again is to bring different people from different contexts, see how international cooperation can take place and how can we perhaps exchange good practices and solutions to achieve rural development and to achieve sustainable development in the longer term. So first, to analyze the global landscape of rural development and the overall work of international cooperation, the role of international cooperation, I would like to invite Ms. Emma to do your remarks. So Emma is from the International Fund for Agricultural Development. And please, Emma, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Joao. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, distinguished guests and colleagues. I'd like to first thank IBRAF for organizing this seminar and providing a platform to discuss rural solutions as drivers of sustainable development. I'm sure we all have a perfect idea of how the COVID-19 pandemic has had really devastating impact on many communities around the globe, especially poor households in rural areas. We know how we have been adversely affected by the crisis, which has constrained our livelihoods, increased inequalities, and exacerbated food insecurity. Just a couple of thoughts from the 2021 World Social Report that states that 4 out of 5 people live below the poverty line live in rural areas. And we note the fact that global trends are projecting an alarming rising rate for global poverty as a direct consequence of the pandemic, which is just one of the many challenges that are facing especially rural communities. So my organization, the International Fund for Agricultural Development, which is headquartered in Rome, as one of the 3 Rome-based agencies for food and agriculture, released its flagship report on rural development in September. And it highlighted the fact that of the extremely poor, which consists at the last count of about 600 million people, 70% live in rural areas. And not only are they faced by the burden of malnutrition, there's also hunger and severe child undernutrition. And we note also the fact of a trend in malnutrition that causes obesity, which effectively means that people's diets are not as nutritious and as rich as they should be. There are deep structural inequalities that are constraining their livelihoods, especially for women and the youth. And whilst we see some gaps reducing, for example, the mobile internet gap in terms of the rural and urban areas, it's still quite substantial. And we note that there are inequalities that are increasing all over the spectrum. So we would consider that these are some of the key issues that must be addressed as we get closer to 2030, which is the deadline that has been set by the United Nations for the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, the recently held Food System Summit, the UN Food System Summit, emphasized the fact that food systems transformation is absolutely important if we are to transform the way that we produce and consume food, not only to feed the world, but also to eradicate poverty and hunger in face of certain crises such as the climate crises. And for this, of course, we need everybody's hands on deck. We consider that there are so many ways in which the various sectors, government, business, civil society, can work together for the realization of an inclusive agri-food economy. But we also note that there are significant differences that need targeted initiatives in order to support the particular context of challenge or of developmental needs that they are faced with. So it is within this logic that development agencies such as IFAD are identifying rural solutions that solve specific challenges in the rural environment. And we consider rural solutions as tools that can be used and reused to address common issues such as resource management or bigger challenges like food insecurity. You know, we consider that international organizations have a compendium and an extensive catalog of projects and partnerships. And they need, not only are they able to, but they need to be able to draw on these to be able to put them to the benefit of other populations and development partners, because knowledge gathered is of little use unless it is shared. This is why we consider the modality of South-South and triangular cooperation as providing a framework to support evidence-based approaches. It is a dynamic, it is a growing collaboration among countries of the South, as well as traditional development partners, and it is built on mutual and equal partnerships. So for IFAD, We are increasingly stepping up our efforts in South-South and triangular cooperation, particularly to support the generation and exchange of innovative technologies and approaches for rural development. We set up in 2018 the Rural Solutions Portal, or the RSP, which is a corporate web-based platform that collects and shares innovative and proven agriculture and rural solutions. In the 3 years since it was set up, the RSP has gathered about 90 rural solutions from all corners of the world. And through our work in South-South and triangular cooperation, how we envisage the Rural Solutions Portal is it is going to work in leveraging the knowledge exchange, the successful stories and best practices for replication, particularly of innovations in support of rural development. And so we are collaborating with quite a number of partners, one of whom, of course, is IBRAF in this regard. So we consider that the Rural Solutions Portal is not only a tool that we can employ to fight poverty, but it also serves the purpose of deepening partnerships such as solution sourcing and promotion conducted in collaboration with key partners. Now, our discussion this afternoon, this morning, this evening, I hope, will ensure that we are able to explore the partnerships that are absolutely important when we're looking at knowledge exchange, at rural development and solutions. And I hope that we will escalate these discussions to a platform where we are able to scale them up further. And so these are my remarks, my opening remarks. I thank you for your attention. I look forward to the upcoming discussions. Over.
Thank you, Wama. It was great hearing from you, not only because you're an outstanding speaker, you speak so naturally, but also because it's good to have an overview of this mandate of and also the role of the Rural Solutions Portal, which we introduced here to Dr. Marcia and Professor Govind as two of the barriers of practices in their own organizations and two of the proponents of international cooperation, but more specifically South-South and triangular cooperation. And it's good to have this context, the possibility that the portal brings to exchange knowledge and to connect stakeholders mainly to further catalyze rural development projects, especially in regions in which we have, and thinking here in Latin America and the Caribbean, in which we have a lot in common. And taking this context of Latin American Caribbean countries and having a lot in common, there's a unique opportunity in this various countries that form this sub-region of the world to see and seek for new ways in which we can build public and private partnerships, in which we can include women and agriculture, in which we could empower youth in agriculture and tackle climate change. So there's a universe of rural solutions that sometimes remain undercover because of lack of access to resources, because of lack of attention from governments, companies, the media, and creating a way in which we can actually put these people together in the same rooms and discuss real world problems is just something fantastic that needs to be done. So it's very good to have this tool in place, and it's very good to have IFAD catalyzing all these projects worldwide. In Latin America and the Caribbean specifically, we have some challenges that are unique to this part of the world, but that are not unique to countries themselves. So there's a lot of ways in which we can collaborate, in which we can develop local agriculture, develop family agriculture, and exchange good practices across different value chains. So I would like to ask Ms. Kelly from the Inter-American Agency for Cooperation in Agriculture to address some of these issues, like what is the main rural development imperative nowadays in Latin America and the Caribbean? What is being done to exchange those good practices, and how can we further enhance good relationship in LAC in order to achieve rural development in the long term? Ms. Kelly, you have the floor.
Thank you. It's great to be here with you, and thank you to IBRAF for the invitation. My name is Kelly Witkowski, and I manage ICA's Climate Change and Natural Resources Hemispheric Program, and I'm based in Costa Rica. For those of you that don't know, the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation on Agriculture, we are the specialized agency of the Inter-American system that supports the efforts of our 34 member states to achieve agricultural development and rural well-being. We provide contextual and innovative technical cooperation through 5 core programs, so climate change and natural resources, trade and regional integration, bioeconomy, family agricultural and rural development, and food safety, agricultural health and food safety and quality. We also have 2 cross-cutting areas that we think are really important, gender and youth, so focusing on the inclusion, and innovation and technology. And ECO really serves as a bridge between actors, sectors, scales, countries, and between science and decision making. And therefore, we also firmly believe that horizontal cooperation and triangular cooperation are really important for making sure that we can build on each other's work, learn from each other's experiences, and accelerate action in this sector. In terms of the main challenges for Latin America and the Caribbean's rural development, I'd have to say that from my perspective and my lens of work, one of the biggest challenges is climate change and sustainability in its broader sense. And why? Because climate change exacerbates all of the existing challenges: food security, water risks, soil degradation, market risks, education, gender equity, human health. I mean, you name it, and it's going to make these challenges and achieving the sustainable development goals related to those challenges even harder. And it also brings some new, challenges and risks to the region, particularly in the case of small island developing states and countries with significant coastal areas. Of course, sea level rise is a new one. And it's also a problem that really affects everyone, everywhere, though to varying degrees. Some stakeholders, some countries, particularly in the global south and small island developing states, are going to be affected much more drastically by climate change. The agricultural sector will be affected more than others that are not as climate dependent for their success. And also people in rural areas that tend to rely more on agriculture or natural resource-based activities for their livelihoods and well-being will also be more negatively affected. And it's also a challenge, like as Emma just said, that requires all hands on deck. We really need contributions from everyone to solve. We know from the latest climate science that all emissions make a difference, and that we are already going to have to adapt substantially to the changes and impacts that we're already seeing. So this is a really monumental challenge, but it's also a really monumental opportunity. It's not something we can focus on piecemeal or think about incrementally. We really need this transformational stage, and this really requires that we do things differently, that we work better on the existing challenges, such as the opportunity gaps between rural and urban areas, which often result in displacement and migration, towards cities. Climate change really provides an impetus for doing kind of what we've been doing, but really doing it better and examining and figuring out how we can do this more quickly. Another of the primary challenges that I see to development work is kind of a siloed approach, picking one challenge and focusing on that. And I know that things tend to have a siloed or approach in part because of how organizations are focused or how governments are structured and how finance is distributed. However, I think it's also really confusing kind of for different stakeholders, and particularly those, at the farm level or in rural areas, to understand where one issue starts and another issue ends. We really need more holistic approaches that are integrative, especially at the ground level. And climate change, again, here is a unifier that's already stimulating institutional innovation through the development of intersectoral mechanisms that help address the problem of climate change. And in the end, what we really need to think about is well-being. And this is really complex. It's not linear. And we need approaches that integrate and focus at the system level. One in particular that's gaining steam now is the One Health approach, which really links the health of soils to the health of plants, to the health of animals, people, and the planet. And I guess my final point that I'd like to make is a little bit on the role of international cooperation, which I really see that we have a role to play as an honest broker and an institution builder to make sure that the governance and institutions are in place and with the capacity to deal with these issues in the long term. And that's something that I really love about working for ICA, because we have a network of offices with our feet on the ground in every country, and we can really listen, take a look at what's out there, and then suggest the tools or methodologies or approaches that we think are going to help best solve the issues that our partners raise with us. And we really focus on building this and leaving this institutional capacity in the region. Our permanent presence, really helps. And again, this strong focus on horizontal or south-south and triangular cooperation. ICA coordinates or supports many of the different regional coordination and integration mechanisms, such as, the CAC. We have the Secretariat of the Central American Agricultural Council. Also we support the Secretariat of the South American Agricultural Council. There's a regional body on organic agriculture, another one that named Procisur, that brings together all of the innovation bodies or national innovation institutes, agricultural innovation institutes in the Southern Cone. We also support another one that brings together all the national coffee institutes in Central America. And these spaces are really fundamental for ensuring continuity, learning, and cooperation through time. I also think international cooperation has a really big role to play in connecting the global to the local levels and vice versa, and in thinking a little bit more prospectively, because many times communities have to think about the day-to-day, and we as international cooperation have a role in helping us be a little bit more anticipatory of the challenges and the more structural changes needed over time. And I think we also have a big role to play in opening people's, minds and perspectives, which can only come through exchange, with other countries, farmer to farmer, technician to technician, for example. And one place that ICA has had success with this is with this system of rice intensification that's been working really well in Africa and Asia. And there were some stumbling blocks for its application in Latin America. So we work to create a long-standing network, using WhatsApp groups and creating exchange between countries to keep people motivating and really open to trying these fundamentally new ways of doing things. And bringing farmers together to speak directly to each other, of course, so they can hear firsthand with an implicit acknowledgement or trust with somebody that faces many of the same challenges that they have. Another example is in the Caribbean. We have a project with the Caribbean Biodiversity Fund in 4 countries, and we're really building off existing traditional knowledge with the vetiver system to address climate risk, and combine this with a contextualization for the specific challenges for each of the islands involved, and really looking to serve as a connector from ridge to reach between different islands, between farming systems and marine areas, and between healthy ecosystems and sustainable livelihoods. So again, promoting this exchange between countries to stimulate innovation and open minds is really important. And I guess my final closing thought would be here that to do this, I think we as an international community also have a strong responsibility to be a bit more honest about what really works and what doesn't work, and more importantly, why, so that we can accelerate the progress that we all need and all want to see in our rural regions and the planet as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kelly. Thank you very much. It was great hearing from you. Great to have a regional perspective on the issue of rural development. This, of course, involves Latin America and Caribbean is not disconnected from the world and have its own internal idiosyncrasies. So it's important to think of the impacts that global dynamics have on rural development inside the Latin American and Caribbean region, such as, for instance, recently, as Emma said, we had the United Nations Food Systems Summit. So that shapes the entire agenda around food systems, food production, food consumption, and everything. So then that has a reflex on how we think and how we do projects and programs related to rural development here in Latin America and the Caribbean as well. And also internally, we have to think about the differences that are not small, they're very large differences between countries like Brazil, Argentina, Chile, and countries like Barbados, Trinidad, from countries like Guatemala, Honduras, and Nicaragua. So you have different necessities, you have different contexts, social context, cultural context, political context. So you need to address everything and try to. And the role of ICA, from what I understand, is just precisely to be the link that connects these two scenarios, the global scenario and the local scenarios, by providing a regional perspective to all these issues in a common one. So it's very good to understand the work that you've been doing, how you see rural development here in the region. But it's also going to be good to hear from Professor Govind, because Professor Govind is one of the person that has contributed to the Rural Solutions portal with us within our project with IFAD, and he has a very hands-on perspective of international cooperation within the Caribbean from his own institution, which is the University of the West Indies, and his personal and professional work with rural development in Trinidad, but also in all of the other countries that form the university. So, Professor Govind, I wanted to hear from you some of your insights and perspectives on the issue at hand, and maybe what are your perspectives for international cooperation in the Caribbean to achieve rural development in the short term and in the long term. You
Okay,
have the
thank you
floor.
very much. Thank you very much. Uh, what we are involved actively in terms of training entrepreneurs, um, not just entrepreneurs, but training people that think entrepreneurially, so think as entrepreneurs, because it's difficult to create entrepreneurs. But if people think entrepreneurial, you find you create a better atmosphere and more possibilities for them. The other thing we find is that people across the Latin America and the Caribbean, the needs are the same. People want access to socioeconomic opportunities, and these are with these opportunities they would allow them to buy food, treat with the territory, treat with the environment, and everything else. So how do we create opportunities for people? um, this should be a continuous process. We need to create some kind of portal, as the earlier speaker said, so that people could access opportunities. They could somewhere where you could put ideas, place ideas, and people will come on these portal. They would enter, grab the opportunities, work with it, and then exit. But what is constant is that there's always the need for such a portal. People enter and exit, but there's always the need. So the challenge is to keep it current, keep it running, and keep it brand new. So what we have also seen the need for an incubator type model where young entrepreneurs could enter, could come in, and somebody we would guide them along the process, um, from from making it from small business to a business, or a business idea to a business. For example, we could teach, if we were to have some kind of portal. This could show agro processing, for example, simple ways of processing and creating new products. And then we could also teach them how to market, the principles of marketing, that introductory level, market intelligence, labeling, shipping, and also how to receive payment. And these simple hands-on ideas and ways of doing things goes a long way in starting the new cadre of entrepreneurs that you would find tomorrow. The other thing is what has been the challenge in Latin America and the Caribbean. I think most of all is global connectivity. People want to be connected to the rest of the world. While roads and water and economic opportunities are essential, if we are based in rural areas and we want to remain there, and now with the COVID pandemic, you see the rural areas are much better to live. Um, you need that global connectivity, and I think this initiative, if we could work on global connectivity, not just in terms of internet access, but connectivity to information and education, I think that will go a long way. Um, international cooperation and knowledge, we have been working with many agencies over the years, with USDA, with ICA or EMA, um, through even the formal system with formal education and a whole lot of networking, making things accessible for people, transferring the opportunities out there. And I think one thing that we really need in terms of international cooperation and knowledge exchange is a think tank. We have these ideas, or we have the idea how to get the ideas out, and we need the opportunities for such an agency or such a body or anybody to bring knowledge leaders together to generate ways of getting that information out to people so that they could e- have access to it, use it, and capitalize on it. Okay, I'll stop there for now. Thank you very much.
Um, Thank you very much. It was great hearing from you, and it was great here from someone that's been working with international cooperation in rural development in practice. Professor Govin shared with us during our communities of practice some of the work that he's been implementing and he has implemented in the past in the University of the West Indies, the food and agriculture faculty, and some projects that connect stakeholders from all across the world. So cooperation projects ranging from cooperation with the United States, with Brazil, with Chinese agents, within the region itself, and the institution itself. The University of the West Indies is a it transcends borders, so it intrinsically involves exchanging knowledge and experiences between countries of the Caribbean, which is an outstanding opportunity for sharing solutions and technologies across value chains, which is precisely the case, and it is precisely what Professor Govin has been taking advantage of during his time working there. Finally, just to hear some hands-on perspectives as well and some insights on Caribbean rural development. I would like to call Dr. Marcia just to make some considerations and some observations of what has COSL been doing in the past and which projects have you guys implemented, and what is your perspective on the way to go now that we have each time more challenges to address, not only rural development itself, but including youth populations in rural activities, incentivizing women to get into rural activities as well, dealing with COVID, dealing with climate change. So what are your insights inside this agenda? You'll have the floor.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me to this session and for inviting us to participate in the project, which I think is a very timely project and a very important one. Rural development is every time I think about agriculture and or food security or safety or sovereignty, I wonder and I think about young agripreneurs. I always think about the question, and this is not the only one I think about it for, but certainly for this one as well, I usually ask what does good look like? Because we keep talking about sustainability and sustainable development. And as Kelly said, we unfortunately, we're still in silos. And whenever we speak about rural development, as we build forward better, more equally and more equitably from COVID and from all the other climate change situations that have happened over the past year and into this year. In the Caribbean, we've had the volcanic ash eruption in St. Vincent, and that has spread all over the Caribbean. In Barbados, we had a massive impact of it. It is still in our homes. it should be good for agriculture. And I can tell you, my fruit trees, some of them have actually been bearing very well. But on the flip side of that, somehow more butterflies are around, and butterflies come with caterpillars and different worms, and so I'm half of my peas and different things are being eaten. So we need then to find out, how do we combat that? And when we think about rural development, we have to think about the challenges, and we have to think about the successes, or things that are going to go really well, and we have to balance how we approach that. And we have to balance rural development with urban development and overall national planning, because if we talk about rural development, we're always talking about improving the quality of life. When we work at COESL with agripreneurs, for us, we're looking at helping agripreneurs to think about food in a nutritious way, in terms of quality. We're helping them to think about how they are doing good for their communities and their countries. And we're helping them to think about how they're making a profit to sustain themselves and improve the quality of their own life and the economic well being of their family, of themselves and their family. And so we have a number of approaches that we use to do this. And number one, of course, is helping them to stay high with their technical competencies. So if they're going to plant, and one myth that we're trying to dispel in the Caribbean, and I guess it's in Latin America as well, is that youth do not want to become engaged in agriculture. That is not true. There are many young people who want to do agriculture. Access to land, of course, is a huge disadvantage, because if many youth do not have family lands or even friends' lands, they're not going to be able to right away lease land. Some of the governments I know have been doing land for the landless. That's something that Barbados has been doing. And we have helped many youth over the years acquire land, but also have helped them to find access to market, access to funding, connectivity, which is overall connectivity, connecting them not just to Barbados, but the rest of the Caribbean and the world. Another challenge we have, of course, with agripreneurs is access to trade globally, because the trade documents are huge. And I can throw that out right now, that is one of the issues that we do need to help youth with. And COESL is asking for that help from trade people who understand these trade documents, that would tell us how can we help youth to really trade. Maybe that's something ICA and IFAD could help with, and also mentoring. So a big part of what we do is helping young people to understand how do they not just up their technical skill and stay on top of that, understanding soil, nutrition inputs, how to do a seed bank, how to do different things, but also how do they make money when they plant their stuff, or when they do agro-processing, or when they do everything. A big part of COVID, that came out of COVID, is helping them to see through the value chain how they could find other ways of making money. And a lot of agripreneurs actually started marketing for other launchers, so building clusters to market other agripreneurs' products, doing deliveries. When we were locked down throughout the region, many people started doing deliveries, and so they found different ways of doing livelihoods. But it's still very challenging as we go forward better and seek to help agripreneurs in a more efficient way and in an innovative way, but in a simple way. Because I find that sometimes when we say innovation, we become so complex that many people are left behind. And it's the complexity that helps to leave many people behind, because one of the things I learned over the years in helping agripreneurs and young people in general is that many times I had to go out and find them in rural areas. And I literally dedicate, I don't do it now in COVID, I'm very sorry, but it's something I want to get back to. I literally dedicated 1 day every 2 weeks to just go into the rural areas, go from house to house, business to business, and meet and greet people. Because of that, there are so many people I found who actually wanted to start a business, who was actually doing different things and didn't have the help, and they didn't know where to go, or they knew where to go but felt, oh, that's not for me, man. I am a little man and I'm a young person. I don't know X, Y, and Z. I don't have the ability to go into those places, don't have the right clothes, don't look the right way. It's, it's all about that. So it's about inclusion. It's about building the systems that we need to ensure that we have quality and quantity human resources. And these are the young agripreneurs who we support, giving them the kind of support they need to build their skills, build their personal development, getting our organizations in place so that we are better able to help, and we come down to the power structure. A lot of times we overlook these power structures, but they're there, they're in place, and they're keeping people behind, or they're reinforcing the leaving people behind, when the SDGs are saying no one should be left behind. And we really need to look at that. And as we look at goal 2 to end hunger, and goal 11 to make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable, we really are going to have to think about integrating smarter, more strategic, but also thinking at the level of people. Because if we don't think at the level of people and women and youth, I mean, just earlier this year, we did, COESL partnered with one of our partners in Belize on a project that they were working on rural development, including making it easier for women and youth to become engaged in agriculture in the rural areas. And, we had to talk about how rural people differ from urban people, even though many of the rural people move to urban areas. But once they get there, they find they have to integrate. And so to integrate, it's a different look and speak and feel, right? And then we can't leave out the education and training, whether it's formal or informal, and infrastructure on a whole. We talk about technology. This is critical because now we can't move around as much as we used to. So it's technology. And when you think about rural areas, many times young people do not have the ability to connect digitally and to do business online, and many times they don't even have a phone. They can't afford it. So these are some of the things that we have to be grappling with at COESL. And when we think about helping a young entrepreneur or a young agripreneur, we are thinking about helping them where they are and sort of tailor making things for them. And there are some things that are going to be I'm sorry, my words are failing me. There are some things that are going to be in general, but there are some things that have to be tailor-made in order to nurture that agripreneur into becoming the business person that they want to become. Because it's also important that we know their needs, and what we're doing suits what they want, and we're not pushing them into something. So yeah, we've had, again, Kelly spoke about a WhatsApp group. We've had a WhatsApp group from maybe 2015. We've had an active WhatsApp group in the region of young agripreneurs, rural agripreneurs, and we have had several networking sessions. And since COVID, we've had a few virtually because we've had to still keep people connected. Connectivity for us is a huge thing because that is where people get access to markets, access to finance, access to materials, and access to knowledge, sharing knowledge and sharing and sharing learnings. So yeah, those are some of the things, and I hope what I said made sense. and thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Marcia. It was great hearing from you. You had some great insights, and you shared some of the stories and some of the ideas that it was good to rehear them because we already shared them on the communities of practice. And when we met for the first time, and after when we did our follow-up meetings, it was very good to hear some considerations from Professor Govin and from yourself that related to youth empowerment, and that were insights that really made me change my perspective on rural development and youth. You said something now that really got imprinted into my head, which is we need to break the myth of the youth not wanting to be rural producers or not wanting to have a rural life. That's not true, and you emphasize that a lot. And I think that it's something really hard to break, but you're absolutely right. There are many youth that depend on rural activities, or they have their rural lives, and it's being an agricultural producer, a smallholder farmer, is no less than being someone living in an urban area. And Professor Govind also added something to that, which is the necessity that we have to sort of rebrand the rural life in a way, in both the narrative and the description of rural life and the marketing of rural life, as not being something less, not being something bad for someone. Like the overall goal of someone should not be to migrate from rural areas to urban areas. They can adequately live in rural areas and have a company, especially with today's technology, have a company, have an ag tech, have a startup, and just flourish ideas there that can make him or her have a better life in general. So with this, I just wanted to do a quick roundup, following basically the same order that we had now, just to discuss the role of the youth in rural development. So if you could kindly address your perspectives and some insights on the role of youth towards the promotion of rural development, in case of AMA globally, but in case of Kelly, Professor Govind, Dr. Marcia regionally and in the Caribbean, that would be great. Amma, do you have anything that you want to share related to youth empowerment and rural solutions and rural development in general? You have the floor.
Sure. Thank you. I mean, Gianpaolo, it's a really interesting discussion, and frankly, of course, we all had our notes that we had prepared, but this discussion, I'm nodding away because I'm just thinking of the various ways in which we assume things for our development partners. I mean, IFAD changed its tagline from bringing poor people out of their poverty to investing in rural people, in rural populations, because technically speaking, what we want to achieve is not just imposing programs in various communities, in organizations or with populations that we've targeted as needing our support, but helping them see the ways in which they can change their livelihoods, their food insecurity. One of the key pillars of IFAD's thematic work has to do with the youth. In addition to gender, nutrition, climate change, youth is an extremely important part of our consideration. And we have a youth strategy that was just recently approved that essentially looks at the constraints that face youth in engaging in agri-food supply chains, which for us, especially as was said by Kelly and also by the professor, we cannot look at the transformation of food systems without thinking about the role that youth are playing. In Latin America, the statistics that I have tells me that about 20% of the total population in Latin America, and forgive me if my statistics are wrong, but they constitute, that's the youth percentage in Latin America. In Africa, it's of course much higher, and they, as the professor said, have been investing and engaging, finding new ways of working, and that is the excitement of working with the youth, because they are far more entrepreneurial, they are far more innovative, they think about ways in which they can support themselves. But the problem always are the constraints that they face that curtail their capacity to contribute to agricultural and food production. And the professor mentioned some barriers such as access to financial and business development, lack of visibility and outreach. Just to give a quick example, when I think about IFAD, I think about this facility that supported the funding of the Rural Youth Innovation Award, which was in Latin America, and it was an initiative that aimed to boost and strengthen the capacities of rural youth in the Latin American and Caribbean region and promote the opportunities generated by young people who are doing their bit to change the rural world in the region. I know that we are pressed for time, but what I'm taking away from this discussion, in addition to the work that we've done and opportunities to discuss further with IICA and the other colleagues in this meeting, is how we can make more pragmatic and make more solid the work that we are doing to ensure that we are not just imposing or assuming certain parameters, but that we are actually bringing youth into the discussion. And we did that recently with the AGRA, the AGRF, which was the, hang on a second, this is a forum that happens every year for the African Green Revolution Forum. And we brought IFAD, the work that we did was to bring the youth together to talk about the challenges that they face as they try and make their voices heard when we talk about food systems transformation. And like that event, like this one, it opened our eyes a great deal to what are the practical challenges that we sometimes don't even imagine or think about. So our challenge now as members in this forum and in other fora that we take part in is to, first of all, bring together the problems and work together to identify solutions that are targeted and practical and adaptable for the context that the youth work in. And I'd be more than willing and able to connect with you after this forum to continue to discuss this and these opportunities and see how we can all work together. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Wema. It was great hearing from you, your final remarks. I'm going to give the floor to Kelly now for her final considerations on the role of youth empowerment and rural development, because we're running short of time. So, Ms. Kelly, you have the floor.
Great, thanks. I really agree with a lot of what the participants have been saying, and in my view, I mean, they're really synonymous, because when we think about the transformative change that we really need, what we need these new ideas, we need this innovation, and we need kind of more open mindsets that only come from youth. And I see it now that I am a mother to two young children, just how open they are to different possibilities and trying new things. And so I really like what both Govind and Dr. Brandon were saying about, training people to be entrepreneurs, not training them to do a business, but working on the full set of both kind of technical and soft skills to make sure they get there. The mentoring and the nurturing, I think, is so important, especially because we see, I mean, even using my climate examples, how much power and influence youth can have when they mobilize, when they create networks. They're really responsible for giving me hope that we can meet this climate crisis in a more effective way, because they've really been the ones who are coming up with these creative ways to demand more accountability from the current leadership. And so how can we help the youth to overcome barriers towards their greater inclusion, access to land, credit, inputs, markets, because this is what really rural development is going to require. And I think key to that is making sure not to tell them what their vision or their goal should be, but really listen to what they're thinking and what they need. How do we do this on their terms rather than what we, as the experts in the development space, think that they need? But they need to be able to shape these programs, shape the processes, and really feel empowered, not just economically, but also politically and socially. We need to be able to give them the support and resources, and let them see that their ideas are really changing. And we can do a whole bunch of things to support them and get it and get them there. And have it not just be about agriculture, but about the broader fields, because there's a huge range of different topics and fields and sectors that are linked to agriculture that can really help facilitate greater agricultural and rural development. So these, soft skills to negotiate, to give their opinions, to interact, to develop, and to influence policy, I think are really fundamental. And I really love what I heard from some of the people working on this in the Caribbean right now.
Thank you, Ms. Kelly. So going back to Professor Govind, please share with us some of your final remarks and some of your considerations regarding youth empowerment and rural development.
I think we should build on what our host is doing, or what Jao has been doing in terms of trying to build that socio-economic pie for the youth. This is indeed commendable. The other thing is a platform of learning where youths can share experiences, because I enjoyed speaking to some of the youths in Africa and also in different parts of Latin America and hear their experiences. And I think other youths could also share from that richness. The other thing is, let us do a few things. We cannot do everything, but let us choose one or two of the big ticket items and really pursue that. And that will, to me, will make a big difference. The other thing is that we have to look ahead. The jobs that these youths would be fitting into has not been created as yet. So we need to create that enabling environment, that fostering, so that they would be able to take these opportunities when it arises in the future. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Govind. So finally, Dr. Marcia, please share with us some of your insights and final remarks on this theme.
Thanks so much. I really I'm enjoying this session. Again, thank you for inviting me. And I think everybody's on the same page in terms of what it is that we really would like to see, or would like our young people to be doing as they grow into becoming more mature people who are responsible for our pensions, if we have pensions. So we do want to ensure that whatever solutions they create, that they become sustainable. And solutions become sustainable when people themselves are sustainable and strong enough, with enough energy to make it happen. While our youth are very energetic and they are very creative, and many of them are solutions driven, we do have a situation now with our health and wellness. And I know that many youth are thinking pharmacy, FARMACY, that food is now is our pharmacy. Now, I grew up in a time when food was my pharmacy. I grew up on a farm in rural Jamaica, and food was our pharmacy. Over time, that went into pharmaceuticals and stuff. But many young people over the past maybe 10 or so years, since we started focusing really on youth in agriculture, maybe 15 or so years, are now have begun to think about food as their pharmacy. And one of the things that I can tell you is that many of the young agripreneurs that I work with, and other entrepreneurs as well, are enduring. They're going through a lot of mental and emotional strain right now, which is affecting their physical, even their spiritual health. And so we need to be very conscious of that, as well as we seek to support young agripreneur and rural transformation, because then rural transformation then looks into things like what are the support systems in place for these young agripreneurs, or for the entire rural population. What are the institutions that are in place that can actually help people and agripreneurs, young agripreneurs? So, I think one of the main things we need to remember is that rural transformation is not just about economic. It's more than economic growth. And so, we do need the political, the policy, um, social and political, even cultural infrastructure for human relations, and for us to do good as we go forward, mixed with making profits, and of course ensuring that whatever we do is sustainable. There was a time when I was growing up in rural Jamaica that we actually had agricultural banks. Um, and as many young people grapple with finding finances um, to do agricultural business, this may be something that we could think about. We have the Caribbean Youth Virtual Business Incubator, and that's a tremendous resource. But what we need to do, of course, is keep it up to date, mobilize the young agripreneurs, and fire up engagement so that we can actually have it as that resource that it's supposed to be, that it can deliver up-to-date and relevant information, and that it can be extremely useful to young agripreneurs in Caribbean and Latin America and across the region, because it is virtual. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Marcia. So that basically concludes our discussion here. It was great to hear from you all. It was great to hear the global, the regional, the local perspectives on rural development and the role of youth empowerment as being one of the key themes to achieve long-term sustainable development, not only across the globe, but specifically here in Latin America, the Caribbean, and also in Africa, where youth plays a key role in this regard. So just to close things, I wanted to thank you all for being here and for sharing your thoughts. Thank you for your presence, for taking the time to be here. And I would like to invite people that are watching this discussion to visit the Rural Solutions portal at ruralsolutionsportal.org, because this is key to achieve the sense of knowledge exchange in rural development that we've been speaking here today. The solutions and the institutions of Professor Govind and Dr. Marcia will be there, so you can consult, so you can see more about them. And also, I invite you to follow both IFAD and ICA and Instagram and Twitter and everything else, so you can follow the developments of new projects and programs related to rural solutions in your own region, be it across the globe or here in Latin America and the Caribbean. So with that, I would like to close the session, and thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you. Nice to meet you all. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, all. See you sometime.
Okay.
Bye everyone.